Hello and welcome. I'm so excited you're here with us today. This conversation is for leaders who know what to do, but notice that under pressure, they don't always show up the way they intend to.
Was the worst year for a lot of us for our mental as well as physical health. So joining us this morning is best-selling author, coach Lisa Goldenthal.
Hello and welcome. I'm Lisa G, your host. You're at the top of your game. Yet the game is changing faster than ever. Strategies that got you here aren't the ones that'll keep you here. The pressure is relentless, and the fear of obsolescence looms large. That's why I'm here. Welcome to the new podcast series, Disrupted: How to Be Gritty and Unlock Performance in Business, Mindset, Wellness, and Success to help you master disruption.
Thanks for coming, and I'll see you soon.
My guest is the founder of Leadership Catalyst, an executive master coach with over 20 years working experience with leaders globally, logged more than 4,500 coaching hours, led over 150 authentic leadership retreats, and worked across more than 10 countries. Before focusing on leadership development, he held senior international corporate roles, so he understands leadership pressure in the real world, not just in theory. His work centers on authentic leadership, values-based development, emotional mastery, and behavioral transformation. Rather than teaching leaders how to perform better, he actually helps them shift where they lead from so their impact changes naturally from the inside out. Welcome to the show, Philip Botha. And before we go further, tell us how to pronounce your last name properly, just so I get it right.
Well, very few people are able to pronounce it correctly, so please don't worry. It's Botha, but I've heard many, many different versions, and I've learned to answer to all of them.
Wonderful. Well, I appreciate you being flexible because the last thing I want to do is mispronounce your name. And let's just jump right in about why leadership changes don't always stick. And I know you've worked with thousands of leaders. Like, why do so many leadership development efforts fail to create that lasting change?
Whew, that's a big question, Lisa, but I think the simplest answer is in our biological makeup. We work on patterns that form in our brain. Things that we observe, things that are actually integral in our DNA. And we learn this is the way we respond to things. And once those patterns start solidifying, by the time we're adults, that's the way we are. And we think the way we are.
Right.
And that we always have to be like that. So when we go on a leadership journey or a workshop or a retreat, we learn something and it makes so much sense to us, but just hearing it, just knowing it is not enough to change all those years of patterns. And we just revert back to same old, same old. And then we
Right.
think, well, that's just the way I am.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. And that's like really hard work diving into this pattern of it's always been this way because it must come from like your deep childhood wounds and things like that. So how can you like we could all go to those retreats. I totally agree. And you're thinking, oh, rah, rah, this is great. I'm going to do everything. And then how can you help people actually implement and make sure that stuff really sticks?
Well, the first thing is to realize how it works, which is you have to understand how our brains work. Because only once you really understand that do you get what we are up against. And the next thing is to also realize and understand that just knowing, just learning is not enough. The cognitive knowledge of what it is that we're learning, that's just the very first step. And the rest is experience. The deeper the experience, the more it starts having an impact on what happens in our brain. And I'm sure you know that, and all your viewers have also heard of neuroplasticity. But that's neuroplasticity in action. So once we start experiencing something, there is a new pathway that happens in the brain. And the more often we have that same experience, the bigger the path becomes. And the stronger that experience is, the more we start following that path. And over time, we are able to build a new behavior, a new pattern. It takes time and it takes dedication, but that's literally how it works. My experience is that if we start connecting with what is truly important for us, what truly matters for us, that's our values speaking. And if we're able to align with that, that
Right.
experience becomes very strong. And we can always return to it because it matters to us. And in that way, we are able to step above what our, in my terms, biological authenticity is. And that's, by then we're on the journey and we start having a different impact on people.
Well, there's so much wisdom bombs in everything that you said. I mean, I have found that to be so true myself in relationship. You know, you can study relationship and how you want to be in a relationship and read all the books, but once you really get in a relationship, it's like feet to the fire. And can I really have emotional intelligence in this actual relationship when I am feeling every little trigger that's ever happened to
Sure.
me before? So I couldn't agree with you more on all that. And did you want to add to the relationship aspect of
Well, you know, something that you said is the trigger. The thing is, what triggers us is that something that is deeply important to us or truly matters to us is in danger. That's why it's triggered.
yeah,
So we have this, let's say, negative reaction of, for instance, anger, because somebody said something. And we take that as they're endangering something that matters to me. However, that's not necessarily the case. So if we're able to stop in the moment and stop reacting, because that's chemicals washing through our brain. But if we're able to stop, because what's been triggered is our sympathetic nervous system. But in that moment that we stop and we actually go through a process of really figuring out for ourselves what truly matters in that moment, what was in danger, where we come to values, we are now actually activating our parasympathetic nervous system.
wow,
And the emotion shifts and the emotion changes. And if we're able to keep doing that, we're slap bang back into neuroplasticity. And we start learning that this response that I have is a response to a trigger that is actually not a trigger. I am the trigger
right.
because I choose how I respond. So I call that emotional mastery.
Wow. Well, there's so much to unpack, and I know we have a short podcast. So why don't you explain a little bit more about values to our audience? Because do people even always know what values are and why we have to be led by values? Because everyone's saying you have to be led by your values, but can we just start with the basics here?
Um, how do we keep that basic? Let me talk about my experience, because when I started as a coach 20 years ago, you know, I was told that if you want to be authentic, you have to live in alignment with your values. That made sense. That made absolute sense. And I discovered my values, which some of them I knew, but I didn't experience them. And I went on a journey. Now, something that I have to add is I'm also a yoga teacher. And having been a yoga teacher, that made me start exploring values in a much deeper way, which I didn't realize everybody else did not do. So I started exploring with values of going into meditations, going into visualizations, approaching values as if they are energy. And I discovered there is an energy behind values. So let me stop there because already it's become very complicated. What I realized from all of that experience is that there is much more to values than just when we talk about values, because values is not a science. There is no science of values. There are people who say they measure values through a questionnaire,
Right.
but that's on a very superficial surface basis.
Oh, okay.
And when I started coaching and I started talking to people about values, I naturally started taking them into, as I said before, meditations, visualizations, using my skills that I learned as a yoga teacher as part of that. And I realized that the deeper we actually start working with values, the stronger the connection and the stronger the impact on aligning with who we are and with what we are.
Wow.
So the deeper you go into values, the more you start discovering that, well, values are symbolic. And what I did learn in my very first coaching training was that the symbol that we use for a value is a diamond. Now, a
Okay.
diamond has a limited number of facets, finite. But if we look at a diamond and it starts glittering, we believe that it has an infinite number of facets. And that is the meaning that values have to us. There are infinite number of meanings that any value can have to us. And that always fascinated me. Because if we start discovering our values, we start discovering ourselves. Now, much later in my experience, when I started exploring what all these individual little bits of meanings were, I realized that each little meaning in a value, we use other values to describe a value.
Wow. Like, what if like someone says like, my value is, giving or doing the right thing? Is there like a
So
example you
let me
could?
use this as an example. What does trust mean for you?
Wow. To me, trust means that somebody isn't going to harm me on a very basic level, that
Okay.
they're going to do something, they're going to do that thing. And when people start not doing the thing, then I don't feel safe that their word means anything.
So why is safety important for you? Why does safety matter for you?
Oh my gosh, that digs down so deep, I think, to my childhood of needing safety.
And now, as a person, in terms of trust,
As a person, in terms of trust,
if
everything
you're
is,
safe, what does it allow for you? If you're safe.
I can be creative, I can be myself, I don't have to fear like anything because I know that at the end of the day, I'm going to be okay.
Did you feel how the minute you started talking about, I can be creative and all the potential opportunities, how your face lit up?
Yeah, to me, I feel safe. I am a creative.
So creative is probably one of your values.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you know, can you trust if you don't respect someone and they don't respect you?
Absolutely not.
Openness. Can you trust somebody if they're not open to you and you're not open to them?
No,
Can you trust somebody if they're not honest with you and you're not honest with them?
it's very surface level. I mean, we all hold stuff back in maybe a business environment, and that's okay. But in a personal life, not so much.
So just think of politics. How much would the world change if we were truly able to be honest and trust?
Wow. I mean, to me, back in the day when I was growing up, I felt like I could trust and respect our leaders. If you
Mhm.
look at the legacy of like a Kennedy, for example, I know that was before my time, and at the same time, looking to his legacy, he was someone you could trust. Like, I think he was someone who held our country and the world in the highest regard and only wanted the best for the world. I know people could argue differently, but I feel like we need to go back to those times when we could trust our leaders again.
So what you've been talking about is what matters most to you. You've been talking about values. You have not necessarily used the words in values, but below the surface of what you're talking about, you're fully invested in what truly matters to you. That's the language of values.
Wow. That is
If you're
so,
aware of it, if
yeah,
you're aware of it, that is what comes out. That is what fills the energy, the way you talk to people, which means they trust you more. But
right,
if that connection with what matters most to you is not there, it just becomes, the blah blah that we have at dinner parties that just disappear and become unimportant.
right. Boring stuff.
That, sure. And from my perspective, why it's important for me in leadership is that if we want to have an impact on other people as leaders, the impact that we have when we are aligned with what truly matters to us, with our values, with our life purpose, it's that energy that fills us, that inspires us, others, that gives them the sense of, yeah, I want to follow them when the going gets tough.
Right. And now that you explain what values actually are, it seems even more tied to authenticity because authenticity obviously is such a big buzzword these days. Everyone says you have to be authentic, but since you're so good at unpacking values, can you tie that together with authenticity and why they both matter?
So let me see if I can do this in a simple way. Um, when I started looking at authenticity and thinking about authenticity, because authenticity means different things in different countries, and the classic expression we always hear, but I am like I am. And as we touched on in the start of this conversation, that's just our experience of the patterns that we have. And yes, we have a physical DNA makeup of how we are. So your DNA makeup is not the same as mine. Your creativity is not the same as mine. So we are different.
Right.
However, we are on this rock to learn to evolve.
Yeah.
And what I call biological authenticity is simply that's what we were given at birth, the way our brain works, the way we are programmed. And that's what we call our comfort zone. But our comfort zone doesn't really allow us to change and to evolve because we want to keep with the same patterns. We don't like things to change too much. So instead, so that comfort zone actually becomes like a golden cage. And
Right.
if we really want to evolve, if we really want to connect with who we are, we have to step over that threshold and connect with what's possible. And that's where values come in, because values, even if we just approach values on an emotional sense, in the sense of what do they mean for us emotionally, that's where we start connecting with our inner selves, what has meaning for us.
Yes.
And that's where the experience starts. And once we are able to do that, we transcend this barrier that we haven't been able to get out of. And that enables us to start showing up in a different way and be neuroplastic, creating new patterns. Now, that's where we build alignment with what our values are by exploring them. And in my experience, if we go deeper to onto a spiritual level, where we start exploring what those values mean in an energetic way, That's discovering a whole new world where it becomes even more powerful and where the impact on us and through our behavior on others becomes much stronger, and where we are able to really transcend what stands in our way, where we're able to transcend our barriers, transcend our blind spots,
Right.
and really start showing up in a new way. That's not only more pleasant and inspiring for others, it is actually a lot easier to live with for ourselves. I hope that makes sense for you.
Oh, it does, because I know we've had conversations before, and I love talking to you. And I know you've said before just to say, I am what I am, like Fred Flintstone used to say that. I don't know if you know that character from the US, but it's a cop out from your point of view, right?
I wouldn't say that it's a cop out. You know, every person in the world does not have to be a world leader.
Right.
But from my perspective, everyone is a leader. Because what is leadership? Leadership is just the impact we have on others. And it doesn't matter if you are the CEO of an organization that has 100,000 employees across the world, or you're a mother with 3 screaming children on a Saturday night.
Right.
It's the impact that you have on them,
Great.
whether they follow you or not.
Yeah. If you walk outside the door and no one follows you, you're not a good leader, right?
So, and that's just who we are and the impact that we have on others. Leadership is not this elitist thing.
Yeah.
Leadership is personal.
I love this topic of leadership. I mean, leaders often know better, yet under pressure, we still revert to these old habits that are so ingrained into our persona. So, do you want to dive any deeper into what's actually happening and how we can transform and transcend and change?
So, in order to transcend the barriers that all of us have,
Yeah, me
we
too.
need to start exploring ourselves.
Right.
And that really means exploring what your values are. And here's another tidbit about values. We have shadow values. And I learned about those when I did my coaching training, but I never really thought about them much. I believed that they were there. And it was only much later that I started in the retreats that I have where we help people shift their behavior through behavior 360s, that I realized that, yes, if we want to change our behavior, aligning our behavior with our values, with what matters most, is important. But conversely, if we think about the behavior we want to move from, and those behaviors are defensive behaviors, whether they're aggressive or defensive behaviors, that's the kind of behaviors we're not really proud of. But we have those behaviors because of our shadow values.
Wow.
So our values are so powerful in our, let's say, personal makeup that even if we don't know them, they try rising, screaming to the top. So let me give you an example. Let's say somebody has the value of freedom, but the real value of freedom means to enjoy freedom. And it's a sense, it's a concept. It's not absolute.
Right.
But if I now state, well, I have my value of freedom and everything has to be free, and I now start turning that into an absolute, I'm not following the value, I'm following the shadow value. And it becomes very much a tangible it-level thing that I try and regulate and control. And if you go back to 2008, the shadow value of greed nearly brought the world to an end.
So close. Yeah.
Because let's say there is a value of achievement, where achieving and creating new things and moving things forward, that's part of that achievement value. But if I start tying that value to simply the monetary gain that I get, now I'm starting to follow shadow value, and I create energy in that. And if we start multiplying that, like some people did, things can come crashing down. So if I look back on 2008, it wasn't a financial crisis, it was a values crisis.
Wow, that is so true. It's like you can't just keep building things up, and expect that they don't crash. I mean, history will prove otherwise. And I could actually talk to you all day because you're such an authentic person yourself, and you make me be
Thank you.
more authentic just talking to you because you make me dig deeper. And I know that we could talk all day about authenticity, but we talked a little bit about emotional regulation. Do you want to end with the need for authenticity even under pressure? Because we're all under pressure these days with disruptions, and those aren't going anywhere, are they?
You know, um, if we're under pressure, it's very easy for us to be triggered.
Right.
And as we spoke earlier, when I'm triggered, anger, all those emotions, behaviors that are triggered by the sympathetic nervous system flare up, and it's not going to end well. However, if I'm able to bring everything back to what actually triggers inside of me, what matters most to me, and I'm able to start working with that and create that experience for myself. And it's ongoing work. But let's say I know that trust matters to me. And instead of blaming somebody because I believe that they broke trust, actually celebrate how important trust is for me, and to say, well, here is a situation that I can now use to actually build more trust and rebuild trust.
Yeah.
Now I'm shifting where I am.
Wow.
And in that way, we're able to build something important as opposed to breaking something down. It's within me. It's not blaming the other. It's within me. It's my choice. And that is the last thing that I will say is that's conscious choice. That is what comes out of working with values, out of working with yourself, is the conscious choice of who you are, and how you show up.
And it just feels better. I mean, when you show up with emotional regulation and you're not defensive and you're not angry and you're not
Oh,
blaming,
yeah.
you
And
just
you have
feel
a different
better about
impact.
yourself, don't you?
Sure.
I love that. Okay, Philip Botha, where can people find you with Leadership Catalyst and all the wonderful things you're doing in the world?
The easiest way to find me is on LinkedIn. Um,
Wonderful.
just give in Philip Botha and Leadership Catalyst, or otherwise on the internet, leadershipcatalyst.guru, Guru. And my contact details are on LinkedIn as well as on my website.
Philip Botha, it's wonderful talking to you again. I hope we continue this conversation again really soon.
Thank you, Lisa. It was a wonderful pleasure to be here. Thank you.